Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews. We're going to review 6 shows like usual, although one of them is sort of a redo because I reviewed the first 2 episodes of this already, but they had a very, very interesting season finale, and it's the first series really to do a new scripted episode, and that is All Rise. So I wanted to check that out and see kind of how they did it and how interesting it was and whatever. Of course, we had the Parks and Rec reunion special a week ago too, but that was more sort of a reunion than this was a regular episode of All Rise. So it's pretty interesting. So we're going to talk about that and 5 other new shows. And then first up, we're going to do the TV news. So renewals and cancellations. Well, this week was going to be the week that all of the networks did their upfronts, originally months ago, but of course that has all been shifted, and some networks I think don't even quite know what they're going to do yet for the fall because pilot season was effectively canceled. So a lot of networks don't really have new things to put on as of yet. So I think they're sort of waiting and seeing, and they're going to present things to the advertisers, but not so much as a big announcement. However, CBS is the exception to this. They did basically what their version of a digital upfront was. So we already heard about a couple of renewals and cancellations throughout the course of the last couple of months. We knew that Evil, one of their freshman shows, that was renewed. We knew that God Friended Me was canceled. And then, of course, we knew some of their longer-standing shows, Madam Secretary and Hawaii Five-0, etc., were already going into their final season this year. So on that side of things, we are going to see All Rise, Bob Hearts Abishola, The Unicorn, and FBI Most Wanted also all renewed for next year. Those are the 4 other freshman shows that are renewed in addition to Evil, which was already. So with the cancellations, it's a lot of first season shows, some of which I really enjoyed. Carol's second act I thought was all right. Tommy with Edie Falco I really enjoyed, and Broke I thought was terrible. That just started, so the ratings must not have been good for that. I think they've only aired maybe 3 of them so far, maybe 4. But one of their other cancellations is Man with a Plan, which has been a sort of mid-season, showstopper for CBS. Anytime something gets canceled, they can plug Man with the Plan in, and it'll run through the rest of the season, and usually does okay. But I guess because of Matt LeBlanc's price tag, and also Edie Falco's price tag too, and come to think of it, probably Patricia Heaton's price tag, and maybe Pauly Pratt. I mean, all 4 of these shows had very high-profile leads, and so maybe, I read specifically that that's the reason Tommy and Man with the Plan were canceled, but I imagine Carol's second act and Broke may be something along similar lines. The cost of the talent just maybe got a little too much for what they're into. So everything else that has not been previously canceled on CBS's slate is going to next season. Young Sheldon and Mom were already renewed months ago, but a lot of the other shows I'm trying to think, like The Neighborhood, all of the NCIS's, the other FBI show. Trying to think of what else is on their lineup. I mean, 60 Minutes, obviously, that gets renewed every year. But yeah, those are the main renewals and cancellations for CBS this year. I really enjoyed Man with a Plan. I know it was a stupid show, but I thought it was going to be like Yes Dear, where it was never on for a full season, or Rules of Engagement too. I mean, those shows ran like 6 or 7 years, and they never started out in the fall. They would only be mid-season replacements for whatever failing sitcom they put on the fall. And this was, I think, the end of season 4 for Man with the Plan, so didn't quite last as long. But, for not a huge rating success, that's not too bad, I suppose. And they might have enough episodes to get it into syndication. I'm not sure. There's probably about 80 so episodes of Man with a Plan, because I think each season was somewhere in the 20 episode range. But like I said, everything else will be back on CBS this fall. What I know about their new shows, 3 of them have been announced. The Equalizer, which we talked about a while ago, Queen Latifah is going to lead up that reboot. And of course, there was a movie version with Denzel, but this time they're going with a female, and Queen Latifah is going to head that up. Be Positive, which is from Chuck Lorre Productions, CBS's cash cow. You know, Chuck Lorre did 2.5 Men and Big Bang Theory and Mom, and you know, most of the successful sitcoms on CBS in the last 10, 15 years. And Thomas Middleditch from Silicon Valley is going to be the star of it. It's interesting because Be Positive is the only broadcast pilot that got completed from any network before the shutdown. So makes sense that's one that they would keep, especially with Chuck Lorre, you know, just being in CBS's pocket there. And then the third one I don't really know much about, but it's a Silence of the Lambs spin-off of sorts. It's called Clarice, and there was already a production commitment with it. So that one is sort of a no-brainer as well. It stars Rebecca Breeds from Pretty Little Liars, and it will take place about 6 months after the events of the film Silence of the Lambs. So that could be very interesting. Probably an hour-long show. I didn't read specifically, but that would make sense. But there were a lot of high-profile pilots that they passed on, and of course they didn't get into the production stage, or maybe they got like half produced and then got shut down. So they sort of only had scripts mostly to go on. But one of them was a new David E. Kelley show, and of course he's done, you know, Ally McBeal and The Practice and all of these very high-profile shows over the years. So they passed on that, and a couple of the comedies that I had read about, they passed on too. So there's still a lot of pilots that are up in the air from CBS and all the other networks, but those are the three new shows for sure in the fall that will take the place of some of the old shows that are leaving. And, you know, I think maybe they could just keep their movie night going. They started their CBS movie night on Sundays last week with Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it did okay. I mean, it got 6 million viewers almost. And they're doing that for 5 weeks in a row just to kind of fill some gaps. But it's kind of a no-brainer because it's free for them. I mean, they're Paramount owned, so any Paramount movie they can run for free. And in fact, before I get to more renewals, Disney is doing the same. ABC is going to start a Disney movie night on Wednesdays. The Wonderful World of Disney returns after, you know, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. But as a kid, that was a mainstay for me on Sunday nights, 7 or 8 p.m., depending on how long the movie was. And, I mean, that dates back to the 50s. I mean, Walt Disney had a show before he even had the theme parks and stuff. But he would run a lot of, like, behind-the-scenes shows, or he would run old movies, because, of course, that was before, like, VHS and everything. When I was a kid, it was a lot of made-for-TV movies. And then, of course, they've shifted that sort of to the Disney Channel over the years. But they're going to run Moana, Thor, I think it's Ragnarok, I don't think it's Dark World. That's not that good of a movie. I think it's Thor Ragnarok. And then Big Hero 6 is one of them. And there's a Pixar one. Up is going to be one of them. So those four. And they're all, you know, available on Disney Plus too. But again, it's free programming for ABC. They don't have to pay for the rights for the movie. So, you know, I could see CBS doing something like that too. Just keeping their Sunday night movie thing going. Because I know, like, Madam Secretary was on Sundays, and so was God Friended Me, so already they've got a couple of holes on Sunday. But the other renewals, Insecure on HBO is coming back for Season 5. It's currently in Season 4. I really like that show. I'm 2 seasons in. I have not or have I seen all of Season 3? I think I've only seen the first 2 seasons. There's only 8 or 10 episodes a season, so they're short seasons. But that will be coming back for Season 5. Upload is already renewed. We're going to actually review Season 1 today, but within a week of its premiere on Amazon Prime, they have renewed it for Season 2 already. The Masked Singer is coming back, of course. That's obvious. It's Fox's highest rated show. And they haven't officially given a second season for Lego Masters, but you know, pundits are saying that's pretty much a shoo-in as well, as that did very well for Fox on Wednesdays too. And then also, the Ricky Gervais show Afterlife is coming back for Season 3 on Netflix. I'm not really very aware of this show, and I love Ricky Gervais, so I'm going to have to check this out. It's 2 seasons have already run, so I think Season 2 might have just gone up in the last month or two, if memory serves. And then it will be back for Season 3, of course, you know, pending whenever production can start. But those are your renewals and cancellations. The only other things I wanted to talk about is we keep talking every week about how the coronavirus has affected different things. There will be a third and final SNL at Home that will be airing in just a few hours. So that will be interesting. They had 2 of those already, so this will be the third. But the thing I thought was most interesting about how networks are keeping up with the coronavirus shutdown, The Blacklist was only halfway through their season finale when the shutdown occurred, so they decided to finish it off with a graphic novel sort of approach. And so it's going to be this hybrid. It's going to air May 15th, and it's going to be a hybrid of live action, the stuff that they've already shot, and then a lot of animation in a graphic novel sort of fashion. So that could be very, very interesting. I don't watch The Blacklist. I haven't since like 5 episodes in, and it got a little too convoluted for me. So I will not check this out just because I know I'll be so lost with the themes. But it's definitely cool. I mean, it's very interesting. I know One Day at a Time is doing something similar because they shut down production about halfway through the season. So they're going to have an animated episode at some point. I guess maybe once all the already filmed stuff is done. I'm not sure. And this week in reboots, we've got a couple. They're both sort of Disney related. One is National Treasure is going to be put into a series for Disney Plus. They've been doing this a lot with their film properties. We've already talked about Turner and Hooch. We've already talked about the Mighty Ducks. Apparently there's a Sandlot one in the works too that I must have missed because I read it in the National Treasure article and I'm like, I don't remember hearing about the Sandlot show, but okay. But so that's another one. So Sandlot, Turner and Hooch, Mighty Ducks, they're all into production as shows, and National Treasure is going to join them now. Jerry Bruckheimer will be producing that show just like he did with the movies for Disney. And then the other one is Disney adjacent just because it has to do with Hilary Duff, who of course started as Lizzie McGuire. And it's not about that, although that spinoff is still happening as far as I know. But the TV show Younger that is about to wrap up on TV Land, Hilary Duff is the best friend in that show, the side character, sidekick. And they're looking to give her a spinoff of sorts. And I don't think it will be on TV Land because Younger is now the only original show they have left. At one point they had like 4 or 5 that were on. They had that Cedric the Entertainer show and the Fran Drescher show and then Hot in Cleveland and Younger. And but this is the last one standing. So my guess would be they're probably going to put it on either the Paramount Network or maybe CBS All Access. I mean, like, Paramount owns a lot of things. I doubt it's going to go to like MTV or Comedy Central or something, but I could see it coming up on CBS All Access or, I mean, CBS proper, for God's sakes, if they don't have enough to go on, you know. But Younger is a very popular show. I've watched the first full season of it. Actually, pretty recently. I was way late to the Younger train. About 6 months ago, I just went through the first season for some reason. I guess knowing that it was ending. And I really like What's-Her-Face that stars in it. She's so cute. I forget her name. But, you know, is it Sutton Foster? Is that what her name is? But Hilary Duff is very funny on that show, too. So I would not mind watching a spinoff of that. So that's the news for this week. Let's talk the shows. So we're going to actually save All Rise for last, just because we kind of already reviewed that as a show. So we start on Netflix, as we do sometimes when they have a real biggie, and Hollywood is a real big one right now. Ryan Murphy, this is, you know, another one in his long line of shows. He's really reached a nice niche with his audience and with a lot of the people that he brings back over and over again to be in his cast. And of course he goes, you know, back to American Horror Story and Glee and all of this. But recently he has that show on Netflix. Is it The Politician it's called, right? Yeah. Politician. Oh, you know, I didn't know he was behind the 911 series either. He does 911 and 911 Lone Star. I'm not sure if I knew that. I probably did because a lot of his regular actors are on those shows or were at one point, so I guess that kind of makes sense. But this is just a mini-series, 7 episodes in and out, but it's all up already because it is Netflix, of course. And basically it takes place in the golden age of Hollywood, the you know, late 40s, 50s, basically, post-World War II, and essentially these two actors, budding actors, are trying to make their dreams come true, and one of them, who is, let's see, Jack Costello, played by David Corenswet, who I don't know, but he meets up with good old Dylan McDermott, who plays Dick Samuels, a studio executive. Or no, that's Joe Manganiello. Dylan McDermott plays Ernie West, who is the owner of a gas station, and he is essentially a pimp, and he sort of, whores these guys out to guys and gals in the valley, and the lead, Jack, stumbles across a Hollywood casting agent in one of his meetups with the woman. So, the first episode basically ends with him kind of getting into a set as an extra with a possible line because of a connection to this girl. But other people that are featured in here, Darren Criss, Mira Sorvino has not shown up yet. Jim Parsons has not showed up yet in the first episode, but they're all going to be in it, I guess. Holland Taylor, she hasn't been in it yet. Patti LuPone, I've seen her. She was in it in the first episode. And Maude Apatow, who you may remember, she's the eldest daughter of Judd Apatow and Leslie Mann. She played in This Is 40 and Knocked Up. And boy, has she grown up. This Is 40, I didn't think was that long ago, and she was probably playing younger in that. But, man, I mean, I would have thought she was 30, the way they've got her all dressed up with, the classic sort of 50s pinup girl look. She's Jack's wife in this show. Well, okay, so Hollywood is interesting in the respect that it definitely is at a time period that I really like. I sort of talked about this last week with the Penny Dreadful show taking place a little bit earlier than this. That was sort of pre-World War II, probably about 10 to 15 years before this show would take place. But still, it's that sort of golden age of Hollywood era, which I'm very interested and very fascinated with. But it is the Ryan Murphy glorified version of it, and so everything, of course, is to the nth degree. Everything is so very soapy. And what kills me about this is, Ryan Murphy made the OJ miniseries, which was fantastic, and by all accounts, pretty much what happened. So why couldn't he do the same here? Well, I guess because it's fictional about these fictional people, he didn't want to do too much like of a biopic about it. But there are like actual people like Rock Hudson. Who else? I saw some names here: Hattie McDaniel, Vivian Leigh, Tallulah Bankhead, George Cukor. So, I mean, those are all real people, so they'll be fictionalized versions, and they'll probably be sensationalized versions. I found it, fairly compelling from a story standpoint, as I usually do with his stuff, but it's too soapy. I was hoping for something a little more grounded. And one thing that really stuck out to me, I should say, was some of the verbiage, not necessarily the words being said, but the phrasing is very, very not 1950s. They sort of have, a couple of the characters have this like sort of sly wit, dry wit, that it's not dry in the 1950s dry, it's more like sarcastic like it would be today. That puts me off. But everybody is pretty good here. I mean, Dylan McDermott, I never watched much of The Practice. I've seen a few episodes, but I actually really liked Dylan McDermott in his comedy series, LA to Vegas, which ran for half a season on Fox like 3 years ago. I thought he was very funny in that, and it sort of put him in a whole new light for me because I didn't know he was funny. And so here he's not necessarily funny, but as with all Ryan Murphy things, everything is sort of tongue-in-cheek. So, he definitely has his moments of humor, and he is, I think, one of the funnier characters because he is just such an obvious scumbag, and he doesn't care who he's pimping out to or what happens. And in fact, in the end of the first episode, Jack gets arrested in a private bust. So, we'll see what happens, I guess, if we continue with the show. But my guess is, Dylan McDermott might bail him out or something, but he's not really going to care. He just is going to bail him out to get him back on the payroll and pimping him out. So, with all Ryan Murphy shows, you will take it with a grain of salt, I hope. But it is an interesting story. I just wish it was rooted a little more in reality. So I believe Hollywood with a B. Up next, we'll go to Amazon Prime. This is with Upload. So this is the show that I announced at the top is already renewed for season 2, which is really cool because this is a very, very interesting show, and I think they could take this a lot of different places. So basically, it takes place about 15 years in the future. It's 2033, and in this world, humans are able to upload themselves into a sort of virtual afterlife as opposed to just heaven. So they get to do that of their own choosing. And so there's this one called Lakeview that our main character Nathan dies. He's played by Robbie Amell, and he dies and goes to this place. I know the name Robbie Amell because I think he does a bunch of those like CW shows. I think he was on The Flash and some of those. But I've never really watched much of his stuff, so I know the name, but his acting, this was kind of new to me for him. But so he goes to this place called Lakeview, and he's sent there and paid for by this gal he's dating that he really doesn't like very much. In fact, on his deathbed in the hospital, he was trying to break up with her, but then she offered to pay for Lakeview. So he, I think, is falling for his quote-unquote angel, which is the person that is sort of in charge of him in the program. And I think that's sort of where the romance will lead. How many episodes are this? These are all up, by the way. Amazon doesn't always do that, but all 10 of these episodes are up already, so you could binge this if you'd like. And I watched the first episode, but it was a double episode, so I did see technically, 2 episodes worth of material, enough to make a judgment. I've been trying to watch 2 episodes lately for a lot of these shows. I didn't get to for Hollywood, but I did for this one. In the matter that episode 1 is a double episode. But when I first read the premise for this, I just sort of thought, okay, it's going to be a Good Place ripoff kind of thing, and there can only be one Good Place because it's so brilliant. But it's created by Greg Daniels, who was the co-creator of The Office and Parks and Rec and King of the Hill, and he used to write on The Simpsons and da-da-da-da-da. So, the guy has a competent eye for producing and for writing. So I think, all right, maybe this won't be so bad. I'll give it a chance. And sure enough, this is why I try to go into things with an open mind, because there is actually room for 2 brilliantly executed afterlife shows. It's not anywhere near as good as The Good Place. Let's keep that in mind yet. But it maybe could be. I mean, I don't think the world building is quite as interesting. I think it's more of a virtual reality sort of look at the afterlife, which isn't nearly as creative as The Good Place, and certainly the twists and turns over the seasons for The Good Place are hard to beat. But who knows? I mean, we're still early on in Upload's episodes, so who knows where it will go from here. But I really like the chemistry with Robbie and Andy Allo is her name. It's an interesting name, Andy, for a woman. But she's also a singer, I guess. She's released a few albums, but this is the first time I think I've ever seen her acting in anything. And there really isn't a whole lot of people that you might recognize. So Creed apparently shows up at some point, but Creed from The Office, but not yet. I haven't seen him yet. But I think the concept is intriguing, about the whole world building even within Lakeview. You see people out there at the lake. Sometimes there's too many people there, and even though you can't see anybody because it's totally serene, people are there, and how can you tell? And because they're buffering, and you see the person like jumping into the lake, and he's sort of going back and forth with his buffering. Things like that sort of make it a little bit cute, a little bit funny, a little bit interesting. The angel at first, when she processes Nathan, thinks he's too much of a douche, so she messes up his hair. And so now in the afterlife, he can't get his hair down, and it just bothers him to no end. So I think we need more characterization for sure. And that's somewhat of the problem with these 10-episode seasons. Is a lot of times we don't have enough time to explore the characters or the worlds as much as I would like to, maybe. 13 is what The Good Place had each season, and that seemed like a good number. Especially because that world was so expansive and so intricate. This isn't so much intricate as I think it is interesting. I think there's a lot of stuff going on within this one world, and if they wanted to build more afterlife worlds on the show, they could. I mean, they've told us that there's many, and Lakeview is just one of them, but are they going to ever explore those other ones? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But that could be an interesting way to go too. But I'm glad to see it's renewed already for season 2. I think it's funny as well. I don't think it's nearly as funny as The Good Place. I don't think it's as funny quite as it thinks it is. But I do think it's got potential to be, right up there with some of the greats. I recently watched another Amazon show about the afterlife called Forever, and that was already canceled after one season, but it was Fred Armisen and Maya Rudolph, and basically they were in a rut in the real world, and then they die at the end of, I think, the first episode. It's only 8 episodes, and it's already done, so that's it. But I thought that was an interesting one too. They went to a sort of heaven, but they were sort of stuck with each other again, and both of them were like, well, this sucks, like, how do we get out of this a second time? So I thought that was interesting. There's so many different takes on the afterlife in a sitcom that we just haven't explored yet, so I was definitely wrong in my initial, like, oh, this is going to be a Good Place ripoff. I guess I just thought because Good Place was so hot that it would maybe go a little closer to that than it needed to. But Upload does not. I really enjoyed it for the most part. I am curious to see where it goes from here, but for now I leave Upload with a B+. Alright, so up next, let's go to Trying. This is on Apple TV+. They're really knocking out the shows lately. We had Defending Jacob just last week, and then I did a standalone review on the Beastie Boys documentary, but here we are with a show called Trying. This is created by Andy Walton, and a second season has already been commissioned here as well. Although Apple TV tends to do that, like the morning show, a lot of their early shows were renewed for 2 seasons before the first season even went up. So I imagine they probably did the same here. And I think that's to hook people and make you aware, like, hey, we're behind this show 100%. So essentially, we follow Nikki and Jason, played by Esther Smith and Rafe Spall. And they are, a young-ish couple. They're probably in their early 30s, maybe mid-30s, and they are trying to have a child but are really struggling with conception. So, at the end of the first episode, they decide they want to adopt. This one I did watch 2 episodes of, and there's only, I think, is it 8? Yeah, there's only 8 up, and they're all up right now. Apple TV does the thing sometimes where they'll put 3 up and then 1 a week, but this one they went all in with. All 8 are up right now if you want to watch them. Esther Smith, I'm not super familiar with, but she was in Broadway with Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. But Rafe Spall, I know from, I know him best from Life of Pi because I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. But he's the interviewer that they sort of do the flashbacks, with. But he is a good friend of what's his face from Shaun of the Dead and everything, because he was in all of those, Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, World's End, Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg. He's friends with those guys. So, basically, each episode sort of takes us on a journey of whatever they're going through at the time. The first episode was mostly really about the conception of the child not happening and deciding to adopt and all of that. And then the second episode he goes off and sees one of his ex-girlfriends, and then they have an eye-opening conversation about that. Here's my biggest problem with trying. I think it's trying too hard. No, I think it's kind of boring. Like it's definitely like slice of life, and I can appreciate that in a lot of different shows, and I certainly am no stranger to people having conception issues. Friends and family have both struggled with that over the years. So I get that part of it, but for only 8 episodes, it seems to move a bit slowly. Especially like the second episode really is all about this ex-girlfriend that he meets up with. Esther Smith is barely even in it, and the two of them have a conversation like we've seen in a lot of other shows and movies. High Fidelity is a big example of that, when John Cusack goes and looks up his ex, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, and they sort of have this conversation, and it's very similar to this. So I can't say that I disliked the conversations. I don't dislike these characters either, and I believe that they are a married couple, that they are convincing in that way. But I just thought it moved very slowly, and for something that's only 8 episodes, I'm glad it's renewed for season 2, because they're certainly not going to get to the crux of the matter here in season 1, seeing as how one of the 2 episodes didn't even have anything to do with the adoption or the kids or trying. Yeah, it helped him, I guess, discover a little bit more about himself as a character, but who cares? It was conversations like we've seen throughout the ages, so nothing really new here. But the characters are likable, and they seem good together. They seem to have real conversations. This is definitely a more conversational show than about pratfalls, or it seems like very real, open dialogue, which I like. But it's done better in a lot of other shows that are on right now, and so this just did not pass the mustard for me. So I leave trying with a C+. All right, so up next, I try to bust through these a little quicker than I used to, because these shows used to be like an hour to review 6 shows and then some news. So trying to get it down a little bit. But all right, so Betty is up next. This is on HBO. I watched 2 episodes of this as well. The second episode just went up last night. It's a Friday night show, which I think is weird, because Friday night is typically, at this point in time, sort of a dead zone for TV. I guess it's probably a little different under the quarantine. But, it used to be real hot Fridays and Saturday nights when I was growing up. You had TGIF on Fridays, then Saturdays was the Golden Girls and 227 and everything. But, ever since the, I don't know, mid-90s or so, Friday and Saturday are typically known as like the dead zones for new television. Unless you're older, like Blue Bloods does really well on Friday nights and that kind of thing. But we've got this show called Betty on HBO Fridays, and it's created by Christo Mazel, who also did an independent film in 2018 that I have never heard of called Skate Kitchen. And not all, but most of the cast of that movie returns here with their characters, so it's basically a spin-off of that film. And it takes place, I think, in New York. I'm not sure if it really... Yeah, okay, New York, yep. And it's basically about female skateboarders. Skateboarding is such a male-dominated sort of activity, typically. So here we see, a group of close-knit female friends that are all skateboarders, and their shenanigans. And, oh my god, this was dreadfully boring. First of all, the one gal, she doesn't play the lead. The lead is Dee Dee Lovelace, who plays Janae, but Nina Moran as Kurt, K-I-R-T, Kurt, this girl, oh my god, she has got to be one of the worst actresses on television today. Horrible, horrible line reads. And the scripts just aren't that good anyway. So basically, talk about moving slowly, if I thought trying moved slowly, this was a snail's pace. And there's only going to be 6 episodes of this, so for this to move so slowly is almost infuriating. It seemed like Moselle, as the director and the writer, or did she write all the episodes too? No, she co-wrote the first one, but she directs all the episodes. All right. Well, and I will say that really the only good thing I thought about this show was that some of the skateboard scenes they had were cool, and there's some interesting shots, even just kind of in and around New York City, because it's kind of shot like a documentary, in that style, I guess. Even though it's not supposed to, like, it's not coming across to us as a documentary. It's not like The Office where there's little talking head moments, but it's shot kind of like a documentary. Very shaky camera, and you're really like getting in the personal space of these chicks, and it's like I think this gal Crystal Moselle wanted to basically do a skateboard female version of the movie Kids from the 90s. Like, it seems like that, except nothing that happens is interesting. Like, if female skaters that are in their teens want to see themselves on screen, this is certainly one of the first ways they could do that. But my God, I have to hope that they have better lives than these girls here. It's so boring. The first episode, it was a half hour long, and I was just like, when does the plot start? Like, it was just sort of, it's sort of day in the life stuff, which again, I don't necessarily mind. Atlanta is a lot like that, and Shrill is a lot like that. There's a lot of shows out there that are more sort of slice of life and less, I don't know, like plot centric, I guess. But this was just, it was poorly acted, not very interesting at all. I mean, my God, the second episode was even worse. Because by that point I'm like, okay, we've already established these characters. I already kind of know who they are, even though I don't like any of them. But let's get to some plot, and it's like there was still no plot. This is rough. I mean, the best thing about it really is some of the cinematography and some of the skateboarding scenes, but yeah, far cry from Kids, certainly. And especially on HBO, it's not even that gritty, really. I mean, there's some language in it, and I know I'm one to always say, like, oh, it's too gratuitous in X, Y, and Z regards, but here it's like they could have pepped it up a little bit. You'd take out a couple of F-bombs, you could have run this on MTV. So I leave Betty with a D. I thought this was really bad. One of the few things on HBO that lately that has not been great. I know that some of the Game of Thrones redos that they've tried haven't been necessarily up my alley, but I could at least see that there's some value there. Betty was just rough. Alright, so next we go back to Netflix for a docuseries called The Innocence Files. There's 9 episodes of this, and they are all, of course, up already. And this is, like I said, a docuseries, so there's no necessarily plot lines, but each episode takes a different case, and it's basically about wrongful convictions, and each case is an episode, and they sort of delve into what went wrong, how it went wrong at the trial. They interview a lot of the people involved. This one I only watched one episode of, just to kind of get a taste for the, how it works. And it's interesting. I've been watching the Fox series Proven Innocent, which aired for one season about a year ago. It wrapped up. I'm a big Kelsey Grammer fan, back from the Frasier days, of course. And he was one of the co-stars in that. So I checked it out, and it ran 13 episodes, but it's all about wrongful convictions and these lawyers trying to get them off and trying to get them out of prison. So here it's not so much as let's try and get them out of prison. In these cases it's more like what exactly happened and what went wrong. And at least for the first one, he's already out of prison. I don't know if that's the case for all of them, but so maybe the whole series goes back and delves into people that already have been proven innocent and are now free, but looking at what happened. And what was interesting about this particular episode is they were talking about the bite mark and the DNA with that, and so it talked about how this particular case was sort of a landmark when he was proven innocent, because it made people aware that, oh, well, maybe this type of evidence isn't always foolproof, that kind of thing. And then also they talked about the sister of the girl that was killed, because this was a young girl that was raped and killed. It was a horrible story. And they interviewed the sister on the stand, and the sister was 5 years old at the time. So she accused the family friend of doing it because the guy in the courtroom, the prosecutor was like, well, do you see anybody, familiar from your sister's, murderer in this courtroom? And it's like, so she points to the guy she recognizes. It's like, dude, who approved a 5-year-old to go on the stand? And then they had her do a lineup. I mean, and then they interview her, as in the present day, and she's just like, I don't know. I was 5. Like, I don't know why they would have had me do that. Da, 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 da. So, but basically, this highlights a huge problem, of course, in the court system and the law system is that, minorities, and specifically low-income minorities, are really at a disadvantage. And so, this is sort of shining a light on that. And not that we need that beat into us, because at least I, already know all about it. I've seen it amongst my my friends. Sometimes I've seen it in the news, and it's all over the place. We know, poor people that are especially minorities have it way worse, especially with the legal system. I got it. So I didn't necessarily need a refresher on that, but I did think it was interesting the way that they tackled everything, and sort of the lean of the program. I don't watch a lot of true crime stuff. I just find it super depressing, and it just is angering. It makes me so mad when there is injustice being done. So I don't watch a lot of it. So how does it compare to, certain other things, or Making of the Murderer, or whatever? I don't know. Because it's one of the few that I've seen. But I do think it's very well done from a documentary perspective. They present some pretty good evidence, and they talk to pretty much everybody involved. I mean, they talk to even the people that were sort of in the wrong at the time, which I thought was an interesting lean as well. So certainly, a well-done documentary, if nothing else. And I may at some point go back and watch the other 8 episodes. I don't know if I could do it during the quarantine. I'm trying to watch more uplifting things during the quarantine, and this is not necessarily it. But I leave the Innocence Files with an A-. So let's close here with All Rise. This is a specific episode we're going to review. I reviewed the first 2 episodes back in September or October. I think it was October. And I gave it a B. I actually compared it basically to Bluff City Law, the 2 new network primetime law shows that debuted in the fall, and I liked All Rise a good bit better. Bluff City Law, I think, got in the C+C range, and it hasn't been officially canceled yet, but they pulled it after 10 episodes, so I don't think it's probably going to move forward, but with the quarantine, you never know. I mean, they might not have anything else to put on. So, but All Rise has already been renewed for season 2, and basically the essential premise is this woman who Simone Missick plays her, Judge Lola Carmichael, and she is a former prosecutor, and she is a newly appointed judge here at the L.A. County Superior Court, they call it. And I believe, if I remember correctly from the pilot episode, she's also the first black woman to be appointed in that position. So, so I read that All Rise was going to do their season finale as a virtual episode, because like many shows, it was shut down before the end of the quarantine, or before the quarantine started. And this show in particular seemed primed for something like this, because the courtrooms are shut down right now. So the premise of the episode is basically she's going to be sort of a test pilot, if you will, for a virtual kind of court. And they're basically seeing how it works. So we see, all the prosecutors here, and the defendants, and everybody's over a Zoom-like thing. It's not Zoom specifically, but we see everybody in their homes and home lives and whatnot. And what I think is interesting about shows like this, and Parks and Rec, and SNL doing all these virtual things is, these people don't have makeup teams at home. In some cases they don't have costume choices, that maybe their characters would wear. So they sort of have to improvise. And here, because of the nature of the episode, they sort of decided, like, okay, well, we don't necessarily have to dress the part. We're all going to be virtual here anyway. We can keep it slightly casual, but I still want to wear a robe, and, you guys should all still be in suits and ties and stuff. But then we also get to see the characters in their home attire, just kind of hanging out and chilling. and of course it's the actors' homes, but it's representing the characters' homes. So, maybe the characters have more plush homes than the actors have. A lot of these are not big name actors. Some are, but so was there budgetary constraints for this episode? Did people get shipped things that they could put in their homes? Maybe, I don't know. I think it's kind of cool though that people are able to do this in this new era. So how was the episode itself? I think it was pretty good. I mean, not having watched the rest of the season, I mean, this was episode, I think, 21, so I missed 18 other episodes. Obviously the fans of this show know these characters more than I do, so it's sort of taken with a grain of salt in that regard. But the main focus of the plot was about the court case and doing it virtually. There were some classic, like, gaffes and like, oh, I don't know how this works, is this on mute, that kind of thing. That is stale already, so that didn't really speak to me. But I like that people are able to find workarounds for this day and age and this quarantine that we're in. So, overall the episode was decent. Like, it didn't blow me away. Like, it's not going to go down in history as one of the great TV episodes of all time by any stretch. It's not even going to go down as one of the great law episodes of all time. But I think it will go down as the first episode that was created virtually during a pandemic to reflect the pandemic. Everybody here in All Rise, the characters are all in real time with us. They're all in the corona quarantine, which is interesting because I was reading an article recently about how showrunners and producers are going to reflect COVID-19 in the fall episodes, or will they? And it was sort of a debate. Like, a lot of the real deal shows, like the Chicago Hope, not Chicago Hope, that's from the 90s, but Chicago Med and all that, or 911, like those shows I think are going to reflect it a little more than certain other shows. But we may see a COVID-19 episode of Superstore. They do topical things like that. We might see one of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So it's interesting, but this, I think, will go down in history as the first, sort of its kind of this show. And it's interesting because, why not take the chance? You're All Rise. It's not like everybody's, hanging on your every word here. You're an average law show. But as far as the episode's concerned, I think it was fine. I'll give it a B+. I mean, I'm sure there were things I didn't get because I don't know these characters at all. But I thought it was handled very well. The dance party at the end I could have done without. But I thought it was pretty good for what it was. So I'll leave the episode of All Rise with a B+. So that will do it for the show. Next week we'll be back with more new shows to talk about, and hopefully some of the other networks will have given us their cancellations and renewals for the season. I'm very interested to see where things go from here with the fall, and some of those shows. But thanks for watching. Comment below, and we've got a whole slate of new shows lined up for the week. I'm still trying to get one in every single day for the quarantine. I've not failed yet in 50+ days, but tomorrow I'm going to have a special Mother's Day episode talking about some of my favorite TV moms. Monday is going to be our weekly movie review. Tuesday, I think we're going to have Dan Does Disney because Connors is over now, so Tuesdays might be Dan Does Disney Day from now on. And then Wednesday's The Masked Singer. So we have a whole list of great stuff to talk about in the next few days, so stay tuned for all of that. Comment below, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and be safe. Thanks. Bye.